I don't know how many of you get thirsty at least once a day. But I guarantee you, when there's a crisis, you're going to be really thirsty. Okay? Water is a crucial aspect of our daily lives. We're made of 70% water. And without water, we only can live realistically for about 3 days, statistically. I mean, if you're a really tough guy or a girl, you can probably maybe live a little bit longer, but let's not test that issue, right? We want to test the theory. Okay, so how much does water weigh? Anybody know? Per gallon? I heard it off in the distance out there.
8 pounds.
There we go. 8 pounds. Okay, if you had to haul water, that's 8 pounds. How many gallons do you think you need a day to survive as a family? Just do the math. How many gallons? Just throw it out. Tell me what you think. You need 2 gallons? For you, just yourself, or for your whole family? Say yourself. Just say for yourself. Okay, he wants 2 gallons. That guy's smart. That's a bare minimum for survival. It's 2 gallons per person per day. Okay, that's the standard. Okay, how much do you think you need, young man? 3 gallons? You want to bathe, don't you? Okay, how many think you need to have 17 gallons a day? How about 50? How about 75? Because the average American uses about 75 gallons a day today. If you do a load of laundry, wash your dishes, cook, shower, drink, okay? About 75 gallons a day is what's being used by each person. Okay, so the challenge that we run into is in a crisis situation, we have to really scale down our usage because water is going to be harder to get. We have an earthquake here along the Wasatch Front that we're primed for that kind of a problem. We talked about quakes earlier in today's sessions. A big issue. Okay, that's just one of many. If you can prepare for an earthquake, you can pretty much probably cover all the issues from other kinds of calamities. But if our water sources are contaminated, and or if there is, well, let's talk about sewage backup. Water crossing with sewage, that becomes a deadly thing for all of us to have to deal with, right? You know, Jim talks about sanitation. Sanitation is one of those silent killers that'll get you. Okay, so we're dealing with some big issues. Okay, water, sanitation, possibly corpses upstream or downstream, or who knows what we're dealing with. Okay, so we've got to worry about purification. Okay, now I'm going to just scratch the surface today, and I'm not even going to give you all the details as far as what chemicals you want to get or what kind of treatment. I'm going to give you some basic stuff. This is basic. You need to do your research. You need to understand that there's more to it than just this, because we're not talking about just going to the tap, turning it on, or going to a spring and filling up our water. We don't live in Eden. I haven't seen anybody walking around with fig leaves, so I know that we don't have pure water that we can just go drink anytime we want. Okay? So, this is, or I should say, here are 2 samples of just some basic containers. Okay, you're thinking, okay, well, we've got jugs, we've got canteens, we've got coolers, 55-gallon barrel down there. There's the containers. Containers are a big part of water storage. Okay, they are not all created equal. This one isn't good for water, for long-term holding. If I need to get a drink of water, it'd work great, right? But you wouldn't want to store water in this very long, because it's not going to necessarily work well with, the chemical reaction between water and metal. We know what happens. Okay, and some plastics, some containers, you don't want to store water in long term because they will leach plasticides into the water, which, if you've ever tasted water that had a plasticky taste, you're basically putting a mild poison into your body. Plastics aren't necessarily meant to be ingested, so we want to be careful of that. So let's talk about containers for a few minutes. Okay, in storing water long term, some of the best ways you can treat your containers, whether it be a 55-gallon drum, 5-gallon bucket, tote, the 275 gallons to the 1,000-gallon polyurethane tanks. There's all kinds of different types, but let's just talk about plastic in general. How do I treat my container so that it will not leach plastic into my water that I'm storing long term. So I go buy a barrel from the store, or I get a barrel from my church's group buy they put together, or I go get one of those big polyurethane tanks. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to fill that all the way up. Put it in the sun. In the summertime is the best time to do this. Add a cup of bleach to that water for every 10 gallons. Okay? That's going to give you the proper chemical reaction in the water. So then with the sun heating and cooling and heating and cooling for a 2-week period, that'll help leach those plasticides out of that plastic container. Okay, then after that 2-week period, dump it out. Empty it out. Now that barrel is treated, that plastic container is prepped and ready to then receive water that you plan to use for drinking water. Okay? Simple basic thing. You can actually do that with smaller containers. You just want to scale down the amount of bleach you're using. Some containers you don't ever want to store water in would be milk jugs, or the jugs that are made of the same plastic that the milk jugs are made of, because they actually biodegrade and you don't want to hold water in those long term. They become brittle. You go to grab them from the shelf, they crack, plus they leach into the water anyway. And then you have water on the ground. It's hard to lap it up and drink it when you're trying to get it off the carpet or off the cement floor in the storage room. So not all containers are created equal. Now, want to make sure, if I'm going really fast, don't panic. My booth's down here. You can sign up and I can send you all this information. I've got a written up copy. Makes it easy that way. One of the things I want to keep you in thinking about is, we went back to the weight. We had talked about water weighing 8 pounds. And if you don't have water coming out of your tap, what is the best source of water that you could use? I want to see if anybody in the audience can tell me. What's the best source? Say it again. Water heater. Okay. Well, what about when that runs out? Okay. What? Somebody said it? Moving water, okay? The best water that you can hope for comes from the sky. Okay, rainwater, snowfall. If you can capture that water, you've actually saved yourself a lot of work. Now granted, not all of us have a water catchment system in our backyards. Last time I looked, certain state laws and neighborhood or city laws prohibit certain aspects of water collection. And there are certain laws as to how much collected rainwater you can actually store on your property above and below ground. Go into a lot of details there. But if you had to capture water, or you had to forage for water, rainwater and snow water are the best sources. Because one, they're already soft. Okay? Softest water you'll ever purify and treat. Second, you didn't have to hike 3 miles to find it. Or you didn't have to go fight with long lines of people waiting at the water trucks to get your daily allotment. Okay, it's bonus water. Okay, in Utah, in our region, we get enough precipitation every year to produce roughly 7,500 to 10,000 gallons of water off of your roof. If you have a 1,000 square foot roof, you can at least plan on some kind of a number in that range. Gallons. Okay, if you can capture it. Okay, there's lots of ways to do that. You can Google, you can go on YouTube, and you can all find all kinds of ways to do that. But if you can capture rainwater, great. If not, you need to know where your water sources are. In an emergency, where are the closest rivers, lakes, and springs? Where are the closest ponds? Where are the closest outlets for water from my house? Okay, if it's not coming out of your tap, it's got to come from somewhere. Because if you don't have it in or near your home, you have to leave to go find it and bring it back. There are people in third world countries that hike all day long just to get a pail of water to do the things they need to do for their water uses and needs for their family. Okay, in Africa, women will carry the pails on their heads up to 20 gallons just so they can, and they make the trip twice, 2-3 times a day sometimes, depending upon how far away it is. So that's the kind of situation you consider. Foraging for water is an issue. If it's not coming out of your tap, you need to know how to find it and what to do. One of the quickest ways I found to help me understand kind of where my region is, where I live, where my water sources are, is I go for a walk and I look for the water sources. Or you can actually go on Google Maps, do the Earth view, pull up your neighborhood, back it out, and start looking for the water tributaries. Look for the ponds, look for the golf courses that have water, where are the creeks, where, and map that out. Find out where it's all coming from so that you can actually know how far your husband has to tote that cart or that wagon with the 5-gallon buckets of water. Okay? So you need to have your containers. You need to know exactly how many calories you're going to expend processing that water, foraging for that water. Because you know what? You can wear yourself out getting water and not have enough energy to do everything else. You're going to have to work together. Okay, so we talked about forage a little bit. The best thing I would recommend is that you lose the fear of drinking water that doesn't come out of a tap. Because I guarantee you that will be a major source. Because tap water is a very new invention historically. Okay? There's always been ways mankind has tried to divert water to make it easy for their access. But most of the time throughout history, they've been scooping it out of some kind of cistern, putting it into a pail or a pot or a vessel of some sort, processing it when they got it back to their home so that it was drinkable and usable. Okay? This idea of doing this is very modern. This is very easy. Or this, whatever yours is. Okay? Very modern movement. Okay? So, I'm not here to scare anybody, but just understand water's crucial. If you don't have it, you're going to need to either move to find it or relocate your location to a closer, more sensible place to find the water. Okay? And grade your water source. How clean is that water source? How contaminated is the water source? The lower in the valley we go, the worse the water is going to get. Because where does water travel? Downhill. Okay? So the closer you are to a water source that's lower than all other water sources, yeah, it may be a big source, but it may have a lot more contaminants. So you're going to have to do a lot more treatment and processing. You need to be more cautious as to what's happening. It's going to cost more resources to produce the water in a way that it's drinkable and safe to consume and use. Okay, I lived when I was first married, Riverton, Utah, just over the point of the mountain, and I remember getting up and seeing on the news, hey, there's E. coli's been found in the water source. No one can drink the water. Don't drink the water. Don't drink the water. Don't drink the water. That's all we heard for that whole 24-hour period. Well, you could not find bottled water in the jugs or the cases or the bottles in all of the adjacent towns around Riverton within 3 hours. There was no drinking water on the store shelves anywhere. That was within 3 hours. They told us not to even shower using the water because of the possible option of water getting in your mouth while they shower or in any orifices that you have that water gets into. A little bit of a concern. So, luckily we had some water storage, and luckily we had friends that we could go get some that was far enough away that we could get enough water. But that became a hassle and a pain. It got me thinking, we are not near as prepared as we ought to be. And my wife says, well, let's solve this from ever happening again. So we made sure that we had enough on-site water to last us 2 weeks. Okay? That roughly, for my family now, family of 6, is 6 55-gallon barrels. That's on my property, full and ready to be drunk or used. I would say that if you have that per person, that's probably a pretty reasonable amount of water. One 55-gallon barrel per person for a 2-week period. Okay, now the reason, this is my math behind it. They say that you need to have 2 gallons, the minimum is 2 gallons. 2 gallons, I feel like I had 2 fingers. 2 gallons, this young man here with the puppy dog face. He said 2 gallons, he's right. That's what they recommend, the bare minimum. 1 gallon for drinking and 1 gallon for everything else. Per day, per person for a 2-week period. Okay, that's just for starters. Now, I'm not talking about a 1-year supply or a 2-year supply of water. I honestly believe that that's almost an infeasible possibility unless you actually have shorefront property of some kind of a pond, lake, or pool that has a regular source coming in, it's being replenished, you're really not going to, it really is a difficult issue. So if you can have that bare minimum, then you know that, okay, I have 2 weeks to find my water sources and have a system going to replenish my containers so that I always have my water. And my full-time job then becomes, or the family's full-time process becomes, finding that water, getting that water, and processing that water so that we can drink. Because it doesn't matter if you have to go to work, or if you have to grow your garden, or if you have to do the dishes, or if you have to sew or cook or clean or anything. If you don't have water, it's not going to matter anyway. Okay? So, now that we've found our water sources, let's talk about how to process it. Okay? If you have a way to write this down, this is all you need to write down today. Redundancy, redundancy, redundancy. Wash and repeat. Okay? That's all you need to know. I'm going to show you layers, tiers of preparation here. Okay, one of the main things I like to do when I've got my water, whether it comes out of my... but I'm going to back up. How many people replace their water in their water storage containers once a year, every 6 months? Raise your hands. You don't need to do that, okay? That's a waste of time and a waste of resources, okay? If it went in your barrel clean and it gets contaminated or it grows bugs in it, fine. Just treat it. Process it. Don't waste your time treating it so that it's ready when you need it. Just process the water when you need it, when it's time, okay? Save yourself the energy. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to either run my water through some kind of a cloth or a towel or a sock filter, something to get the big floaties and the particulates and some of the coloration and hair and bugs and whatever out of it, okay? They can work, but you know what? That's a one-time use. If it's the paper ones, it's not worth the effort. Just use some towels. You can wash towels. You can get these sock filters. These are rated for a lot of gallons. The manufacturer tells I can't say how many because they rate these for automotive use, not drinking water, so they won't give me a number. They don't want to get any lawsuits. So I say use it till it doesn't work anymore.
Is there a seam in the bottom?
It's got a seam. It's triple sewn. So, but we do group buys on these. If you're interested in finding out more about it, you can sign up for it and learn more about the group buys, how it works. But the trick is getting some kind of a pre-filter, whether it's cloths, towels, socks, whatever. Get all the big stuff out, okay? That prolongs the life of your other filters that are more expensive and are going to do the job. One that I like to use, there's all kinds of filters, and I'm not here to necessarily say this is the only one that works. There are lots of different kinds, okay? You've got pumps, moving parts with gaskets. You've got ceramic filters. A lot of those are great. I love them. Katadyn I love. The ceramic filters from Purification filtration systems, from the Berkey system, they all have the same technology. It's all very much the same. There are some downsides to those types of filters. I'll talk about those, but I want to talk to you one that I find works really well it's a workhorse. Okay, it's the Sawyer filters. Okay, this is really small. It's lightweight, but the technology inside makes it amazing because it actually has the ability to clean it. You just backflow clean water with a syringe back through till you get clean flow again, and then you can use this for up to 1 million liters. Okay, cost per gallon, that's pretty good when you look at the cost of the filter. Okay, a workhorse. This will just do a very good job. Now, is that the only thing I'm going to do? Absolutely not. Okay, I've already ran it through my sock or my towel, and I've run it through this. What I do is just sample it, taste it a little bit, see do I have a flavor in it, do I have a scent in it, if it does not quite feel right, is it not appealing to my taste buds, right? If that's the case, then I want to run it through. You can see inside here, this is a version of a ceramic filter. Okay. Ceramic filter with a sock on it. This is just another way it has activated charcoal in it. The activated charcoal will then remove taste, odors, that kind of thing. And then you can focus on Determine, okay, now is that palatable to me? Well, is it still safe? Maybe, maybe not. So there are options. And I'm not here to promote any one kind of chemical or treatment, but you want to add some kind of a biocide to your water, whether it's Clorox bleach or chlorine crystals or grapefruit seed extract oil or iodine or whatever. Just know that when you add a biocide to your water, you're adding a poison to your water, or a agent to your water that's going to flavor that water with some kind of a flavor that may not be necessarily appealing to your kids or your family, but it has the potential of being a lot safer to drink. Okay? If that's not an option, you can always, one, boil or pasteurize your water. Okay? And or you can do that on top of the biocide if you want, just to make sure. Okay, so there's more than one step in processing your water. It's not a matter of, okay, we got it out of the stream, we dumped it in the filter, now we can drink it. Sometimes you have to go a little bit above and beyond, because depending upon how contaminated that water is, determines how much work you need to do to make sure that it's safe.
National Geographic had an article in Africa where they put water in just plastic bottles to get all the bugs out. Could you put it through that carbon filter and take out any plastics and let it leach out?
It depends on the type of chemical that plastic has in it. That determines whether the charcoal will bring it out or not. But the charcoal is good at filtering out a lot of that type of stuff. Again, most filters on the market are only going to do about 1 micron in size as far as filtration. There are some that will do smaller, but you always still run the risk of chemicals getting through, heavy metals getting through, those types of things. So you just need to understand where you, like again, say the lower your water source is in the valley, the worse or the higher probability of having heavy metals or other contaminants in it that you don't want to deal with. Okay, just to keep in mind. So how much time do I have? 5 more minutes. Okay, I've really flown through this. This is great. I'm actually at the point where I'm almost open question time. I'm just trying to cover some loose ends here. The main thing you want to keep in mind is redundancy. You need to have fail-safes, checks, balances, have more than one of each filter. It's not a matter of, okay, we have our filter. Make sure that you have several filters. Make sure that your neighbors have several filters, and your family members, extended family member. You know, it's important. I mean, if that's the only Christmas gift you're given is water filters, and you've just saved lives. Now, they look, what is this? They'll keep you alive. Okay, Merry Christmas. Okay, so the reality is this. Water is important. We need water. If you don't have water, it doesn't matter how much wheat you have in your basement. It's going to be really hard to make bread with dry wheat. Last time I checked, water was one of the main ingredients in making bread. Okay. Again, I'm glad everybody's here. It's great that these kind of events go on. Because it helps us to hear what really works, what doesn't work, helps us to understand what we need to be doing, and then gives us hope. It's about hope, faith, and charity. You can add a little bit of that to your water and you're great. Okay? I prefer it that way. Sometimes it's hard to find enough charity to get in that water, and we'll work on it. That's one of the main important ingredients in our future. Okay, so any questions at this point for anybody?
Back to that article.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say something. Sunlight can actually kill the UV rays in the sunlight. You can actually get UV lights. They will kill the protozoa, yes.
If you used your canning jars, then there wouldn't be any leaching out.
Correct.
From plastic.
Correct. Now, I've actually been in survival situations on purpose. I don't go out and find myself in trouble on it just by accident. I like to go get in trouble on purpose so that I can figure out how to make it work, so if I can get through the stress. So I was on a survival course. We were in the desert down near Lake Powell, and we were several days away from water sources that we knew of. So it was a matter of if we ran across the spring, great. If we found a water trough for horses or cattle or whatever, great. We were running low on water, and we found one of those big, huge, round water troughs they were feeding cows with. Okay? There's cow manure all around the ground, and just one thing where you walk out, great. Bugs swimming in the water, moss and grossies, all that stuff. Didn't see any dead animals in the water. I'm sure there's plenty of dead bugs. Maybe some bird fecal matter in there. I don't know. Okay, It was very open, very contaminated. Well, I do know that the first inch to an inch and a half of water, sometimes even 2 inches, but I always like to give myself a little bit of buffer, so I take a ½ inch off it. So an inch and a half of water, the surface water, if it's still water, the sunlight UV rays are doing their job and they're killing all the uglies in the water in that first layer. So we're doing the old stick our little straw in, sucking it out, and gorged ourselves on this unpurified water, and then we filled our canteens carefully with that first layer of water and made our way through. Now, luckily, in our group, no one got sick. We used good practices, right? But it is an issue. So yes, the UV rays can be a good part of that. Again, when you're talking about boiling water or pasteurizing water, fuel is an issue. So I highly recommend you get yourself the sun ovens, okay? Because I think there's people that are selling them or have access to get to group buys for you, whatever they offer. And the important thing about that is that's free fuel. Okay, if it's a sunny day, it doesn't matter what time of the year it is, if it's a sunny day, you can pasteurize water. All you need is to pasteurize it, get it up to temperature, 160 to 180 degrees for about 10 minutes. 10 to 30 minutes if you're concerned about it. That'll kill anything in the water that you can possibly want. And you haven't expended any fuel, you haven't used a propane, wood, coal, or charcoal to boil water. Okay? If you're in a quick pinch, yeah, you can bring it to a boil, 3 minutes, you're good to go. Okay? Those are just some options for filtration as well. Anything else in the audience? It's called a saw your filter. And if you're interested in finding out more, we actually put together kits. So if you're interested in getting on one of the group buys that we put together regularly, you can get on there. I'm in booth 19 down here. There's another hand. Yeah, ishallfearnothing.com. And I pound my chest every time I say that. I'm just kidding. I am a scaredy cat, but I understand that if I have faith and I focus on hope, it doesn't really matter what happens, right? As long as I'm nice to my neighbors. Okay.
All right. We'd like to thank Jed Norwood for that great presentation. If you have more questions, he does have a booth just down here that you can go and talk to him some more and get some more information.